All right, the walnut ink and espresso powder mixture has dried. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of the paste. And I think Bob Ross would be proud of me for my bravery test. So here's my diagonal, a little up. Let's make our mark. There we go. There's a mark. I can't turn back now. I'm just gonna. And I want this to be a little rough. I just got that little like rough feathery face. I love it so much. Gosh, these are like predators that could like take my eyes out with their talons. And here I am like baby talking them like, oh my gosh, look at that cute little baby owl. Aren't you just a good little owl, aren't you? Aren't you? Yes, you're just such a cutie. Scratch that up a bit, give it a little more texture. Dip in for some more. Next side. Its ear only comes up a little bit higher than the other one. I'm not terribly concerned about that because I can paint over it. Right now, my biggest concern is to just make sure I've got a good starting place. Here. One feather. I don't like that big glob, so I can scrape it off. I'll do that. There's a feather. And there's another feather. And another feather. I don't like how much these are standing out compared to the face feathers, so I'm going to scrape the extra off. I'm just going to scoop a little, and they just have it kind of dot out. All right, I used my blow dryer, and next, because we place so much importance on eyes, and I mean, come on, look at those. Look at those owl eyes. Owl's got such big eyes. I'm going to go ahead and start putting in the eyes. Okay. I'm going to rinse my brush, move on to the next eye. I'm just going to lift. Do the same thing. Lift, wipe. Wipe. You might need to re-wet the brush. And I don't need to lift all of it, because again, I don't want a big hard outline. So that was only lightly lifted. This outside that we could see much more, I want it like that. Oh, that looks so much better. Oh, I'm so excited. Like, it's so cool whenever something that's like, oh, hey, let's try this out. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing ever. And that's really what art is, isn't it? Just have some fun, explore, try new things, find out that this coffee walnut ink mixture lifts beautifully when painting little angry owl eyes. Hi, Valerie here. I just wanted to pop in real quick and ask, do you want to paint with bold, vibrant watercolor? Well, I teach you how to paint this beautiful, dare I say, elegant elephant using bright tube paints and lovely texture effects. Just go down to the link below, and it doesn't cost any money. Sign up and you get a free watercolor lesson along with the line art so you can follow along. Okay, back to the video. All right, now I want to move on to the white feathers of this guy here, because this guy is mostly white. And the reason I want to do so is I've already squeezed out my paint. And even though, yeah, gouache is technically something you can reconstitute by spraying it with water, letting it sit, I find that it's best when you use it straight from the tube and like nice, juicy, wet. Once it dries, it just doesn't do it for me. So here we go. I'll even add a little bit more up here. I feel like I didn't get this far enough. And that's fine. Look at that. All good. And gouache can be lifted, so if I decide later that I just don't really like how I did that, I can lift it. But as you've seen with the coffee mixture will lift too. So I do need to keep that in mind. I do want to pay attention to the way that the feathers are falling on the face. So you saw me brush went flat and I kind of dry brushed because right here the feathers kind of swoop down a bit. That's one way to make a painting convincing, even if you're not being realistic, is look at what direction the fur or the feathers are going in and just sort of paint it in that direction. So let's see, around the beak, they've got like those little feathers that kind of go like this. And so I'm just going to do them. I'm going to do those little feathers. Little semicircles. Not even the full semicircles. They're just little curved lines. I want to smudge things with my fingers. I want this to be smudgy. Also because this is the owl that's behind, my foreground owl. So I don't want him to stand out too much. Bringing in some of these feathers down the side. It comes down in practically a straight line. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm keeping it as sort of a dry brush around. Now I'm already kind of intruding on this owl, so I'm going to scrape my finger away from it. And look, my fingers are actually picking up the coffee, which I think is fantastic for this. Now I've got this part of the face kind of going into, so I guess it's little angry feathers going into this guy's face feathers, and that works really well for me. Now, one thing I'm starting to think is that this beak does not look like it's in the right spot. It really does look like it should be more down here. Even though according to my reference, that brings it really close to this guy's head. So what have I already done? Well, it means I got off in my composition somewhere. So what do? I say, I do a couple things. One, let's go ahead and scoop this up. I'm going to change Sal's face a bit. The beak is now going to be here. And that's okay, but I will have to wait for things to dry. And I'm going to use a quinacridone burnt orange to paint the majority of this one. But it does have some white. I don't know that I want to put it in yet. But you know what? I think I will just because the gouache is already wet. And let's see how this goes. So I do want to make him a little stronger right here. And he's got some feathers that kind of come off this way. And there's his little angry face. And then some things here. Use my finger to pet it. Using the side of my brush. Do the dry brushing. And it's got a couple feathers that do come like that. And it's got some down here that are like barred. I am going to take a look at my owl, and I see that we've got a lot of the white in. It needs this dark color, which I'm going to be using the Bloodstone Genuine. It does also have some warm spots, which I'm going to use that quinacridone burnt orange. Now, I love it on its own, but I've not tried it on my coffee paper yet, so let's go pick somewhere a little inconspicuous, right here by the ear. Okay, yeah, that actually does make a difference. It looks fine. I am going to lessen the intensity a bit by bleeding it away a little, but very gently bleeding it. I don't want to lift underneath. This will hopefully give our guy a little more personality. But the majority of this guy has bloodstone. Pick up my fresh bloodstone genuine. I'm just going to look at him and see where I've got any dark lines. So I've got some right here. I don't feel like I need to do a bunch. Just enough that I say, hey, I am not afraid to put in dark value. Enough to say, I know what a screech owl looks like. Do you know what a screech owl looks like? Of course there are little dark marks on it because it's an owl. I don't need to get everything exact, just get... I'm going to tell the story of this owl. What does this owl look like? All right, let's try and put that beak back in. Dotting off my ferrule. This is really where I want the beak. If I really want to go at it, I do have a much stiffer brush. Oh, this one is pretty stiff. And based on its color, you should be able to see that I use it a lot for lifting. The last painting it lifted was a blue painting. Owl time. And in case you're wondering, why am I working with fresh pigment from the tube instead of working from a palette? That's a couple of reasons. One, I'm addicted to buying paint, and I have way more paint tubes than I have palette room. And the other is I like being able to have full control of getting my thickest paint, which is most easily done if you just work from the tube. And then you're just this little redhead. I'm okay with it starting to fade, be less intense in color, because our focal point is this owl right here, and due to it, you want to keep like your greatest levels of contrast and most intense color where your focal point is. And so since this is our focal point, the color down here is not as important as the color up here. And so I want to paint this in. I want to say, I know that there are feathers down here, but these feathers for the story of this painting are not as important as what's going on up closer to the owl's face. Let's go back over here to its face. Add some more of that lovely red color. Oh, I'm sorry, quinacridone burnt orange. Now this owl also has some dark colors going on. Now my painting is still wet, so I'm a little wary about going in, but let's find out. Let's find out. Pick up a nice thick mixture of the Bloodstone Genuine. Remind myself to blot off my brush, and here we go. It's got some little dark lines that come this way. All right, back to Bloodstone Genuine, and it also has some of these little barbed feathers on the top of the head. The area above the eye is actually that red, so there you go. I'm actually paying attention because there is kind of a pattern where these dark marks are falling. So I'm not so interested to be crazy precise, but I do want to, and here's the word again, be convincing. Okay, so what is this looking like? I think this area is too quiet. Like, I want it to be a little quiet, but too quiet is kind of boring. Let's grab quinacridone burnt orange, and I really want to bring a little more red up here, actually. I just called it orange, and I still said red. It's like how a dog is red, but it's not actually red. But we still say that the color is red. Why is that? Okay, layer is dry. And as I'm looking at my reference photo to this owl, there's a lot more of this white around the face, which is why I was trying to get all of my base color down and then going to come back in, because I will use the gouache. The gouache is still fairly wet. So back to my little size 3 brush. My cat is below me begging for attention. If you think I'm a monster for not giving it to him, you're kind of right. And this owl back here, I haven't put in all of its little dark feathers either, so I'm going to go back into my Bloodstone Genuine. I like to work with a limited palette just because then I don't have to think about the intricacies of color. I can just think in terms. Just a little bit right here. Yes, the sound effects are necessary. And to finish off at least stage 1 of the owls, because they are kind of floating and I am thinking about adding this piece of wood in a way, I'm going to grab this itty bitty little liner brush, grab wash, and let's go and put some highlight in. And there we go. Already looks much better. All right, I'm back. I've had a bit of a think, and my thinky thonk is I'm going to apply a thick layer of the Bloodstone Genuine so it can kind of look like a charred log or something. And then I'm going to give a try with spraying some granulation fluid on it and just see what it does. I mean, this painting isn't a serious painting anyway. This is a fun, let's paint on top of coffee painting. We don't need to take things that seriously. So I've already put on some more paint. Thick. Okay, where does this brush kind of start? Starts about here, comes down, comes down. Okay. Honestly, this dry brushing is already pretty great. Oh, now I'm starting to think, should I just leave it with the dry brushing? Nope, nope, we're going to keep going. Because this is an experiment now. We're in this together. I do want to keep some of the underlayer showing through. I think. Maybe not. I'm going to rinse my brush and just sort of get a lighter amount of pigment. Take it right to the edge. Because water will follow where water is. If I left those areas dry, it might not flow as well. So let's see what happens. Spritz. Oh, well, maybe it would help if I like aimed the spritzer properly. All right, so the answer is might do better on larger surface area. Though it's already actually pretty cool. And look, because I hit the feathers, they're kind of bleeding into this, which is kind of rad. So maybe my blunder was actually a stroke of genius, perhaps. Oh, but we are getting a pretty cool texture happening right there and here. All right. Let's should probably keep this at an angle though. I'm checking how clean my hands are before grabbing my little propping doos. And that way, everything can keep coming downwards. All right, it is time to finish this painting. I want to put in its foot with its talons and everything, because I could leave it like this. I love the texture, rivulets I've got going on. Having this dark bit here gives the painting grounding. I don't just have owls floating in space. And for all we know, maybe the talon is kind of behind the branch, but I really like the idea of having that foot sticking out. It's just a little extra. It's a little extra. Just go with that. So I know I commented earlier that I don't usually re-wet gouache, but in this case, because I don't want the foot to have the same importance as all of the stuff going on up here, I do have it watered down. You can like touch it over there. But do you see really quickly, like, I don't want to move this too much, but how even though gouache is opaque, you can still see a bit of the brown underneath, whereas the white watercolor ground I put down is still incredibly white. And so it makes that white pop out more visually than the other white I've used. And I really don't want this popping out too much. And I also don't want to cover up this rivulet. So what I can do is paint the foot kind of under it or around it, or just reposition it. And then if I hate it, I can always paint over. So let's just start. It's not really that big a deal. It's just, we've got fluffy feet. There's one. And then now I'm going to do that little lifting thing because I love how that looks. So I'm just going to lift off where I want the talons to be. One talon. Definitely remembering to dab off my brush because I don't want the same issues that I usually get. I might add a little more gouache because it's looking a little flat. Just a little bit. There, that one's the most important. And I'll do this a little bit. There. All right. I think that looks pretty good. All right. There we go. Got a couple screech owls. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and if you have any suggestions for what else you want to see me paint. I really hope that you try this yourself. I will put a link to the photo in the comments. It's available on Unsplash, and well, I'll see you guys next week. Bye!